Hello, everybody. Welcome to the September 2025 program, Fireground Strategies and other stuff from the street on Fire Engineering Talk Radio with Chief Avillo, my partner. Hello, Chief. And I'm a retired battalion chief, Jim Duffy. And because it is September, I think we need to begin to talk. A few days ago, we had the 24th anniversary of the attacks and the murders at the World Trade Center in New York, the Pentagon, and the people on Flight 93 that crashed in Shanksburg. We can't forget any of these people. And Shanksville. What did I say?
Shanksburg.
Did I really?
You did.
I am so sorry.
You want to start over?
No, you know what? This is fine.
Okay.
Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where, again, ordinary citizens stepped up and became true heroes of the day, as well as the members of the FDNY, NYPD, the Port Authority Police, and many, many, many everyday citizens saved lives that day. It was a horrible day. They planned these attacks and murders on us, the whole United States of America. They wanted to cripple us, but we stood up and we rose from the ashes like a phoenix. And I think we should remember this. And to the senior members and Chief Avillo, I'd like you to chime in on this. As I stop at the firehouses, as I've been retired for a little while now, many, and I'm going to say almost half the members in my fire department that I retired from, they're in their 20s. They were either children or not born when this happened. And we need to remember to bring the importance of remembering those people to the members in the firehouse, especially if they're still on duty. This is September, and yes, we all have it in our minds now because of the anniversary, but we need to remember them all year. I have friends that are suffering both emotionally and physically from working on the pile and working there when the buildings came down. And the emotional toll is still going on every single day for these folks. And the closer you work to the incidents that happened, the more you're going to have to deal with it. But we all have to deal with it. We all have to remember and remember how we felt that day. Chief, any things you want to add to this?
Well, I think you're, right that we can't forget about this. And, a good deal of the firefighters, I just did a class, 4 days of classes in North Hudson. It was really, really nice to go back home, and they welcomed me with open arms. I did legacy multiple dwellings, but, we are directly across the river from, New York City. And, I'm going to say probably 75% of the department was not there, on 9/11 and, we went over there and stuff. And I'm going to say probably a good portion of those guys, I don't want to say 50%, but it's getting there, weren't even born. And you're right. A lot of them were kids back then, and they don't really remember. Like my kids don't really remember, but they do remember, And I think, not only the fire service has to continue to enforce, I hate to use the word enforce, but continue to champion the memory of 9/11, what it did to our country, in the end, making us stronger. But I also think that, schools and, other organizations that are huge organizations in this country need to remember these things. I'm sure like the NFL is going to be doing something, in commemoration of 9/11. I'm hoping they are, but I think it needs to be a countrywide memory type thing. I mean, 9/11. I don't think it's not a national holiday or a national day of commemoration yet, is it? Has it
No,
been
sir.
sort of?
No, sir.
Uh, no, right. Like I think they were talking about calling it Freedom Day or something like that, and I don't know if that ever got off the ever was was sanctioned or whatever it is, but I think it's important that people remember this because there's so many people not here now. There are so many people not here from sicknesses and diseases later on, and there are so many people still suffering. And whether they're suffering from disease or suffering from, just the mental weight of, losing family members, losing friends, it can be crushing, And I know in the area we live in, you know, everybody kind of knows somebody who
Oh,
either
yeah.
lost someone or, it's very, very close to us in a lot of ways. And I'm sure it's the same way in Washington, although no first responders were killed there. And, the families from Shanksville, you know, but, I know in this area here, it's still a very heavy, heavy, sort of weight on the psyche of everybody. I was on Boulevard East the other day before I started classes. I was walking Boulevard East and I'm looking over at New York City, and I took some great pictures, and I'll probably use some in my classes. But I was looking over at New York City and the Freedom Tower, and you just thinking, you just that memory of seeing the Twin Towers and all the smoke and, collapsing and all. It's just, I think we, in this country, we have a collective critical incident stress sort of issue with this.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of us much worse than others,
Yeah.
but yeah, we have to keep that memory alive, because as time passes, people forget. This is a very instant world right now, but this is one of the things that we can't forget. It was our Pearl Harbor.
Yes, it was. And you know what? We think about it, and we think about it because we lived through it. But I vicariously, through my father, World War II and things like that, what they lived through and what they went through at that time. My father was born in 1925, served in World War II, and talk about the greatest generation, but we had our own version of the greatest generation that day. And we need not to forget about that. I've seen many, many people do writings about September 12th, 2001, and how we should go back to that we need to be kinder to each other. We need to take care of each other. In the months right after September 11th, I think this country, although we are kind people, but everybody was kind to everybody. Everybody was trying to help everybody, whether it was through fundraisers or setting up shelters and serving food down at Ground Zero. I think we were better than we are today, and I don't want to be too critical of where we are today, but we seem to be much more angry at each other today than we were right after 9/11, 2001. And I think we should start thinking about that again. Then, these are our fellow Americans here, and we need to take care of each other. Very important. And I'm going to...
Well, it brought the country together.
Oh,
It brought the
yeah.
country together, and unfortunately, the country's not so together
No,
right now.
it's not.
And just for really dopey things too. You got to look at the big picture of
Yep.
America and not the smaller pictures of all the other crap that people are fighting about.
Yes.
I mean, I guess all that leads to the big picture, but this is America. We're Americans,
Yes.
man. You got to fix the country, not. You got to be a problem solver, not a problem finder. And there's way too many problem finders
Yes.
out there. It's all over social media. Everyone's a finder.
Yeah. And you know what? We can start small. You can be nice. You thank your cashier when you go to the supermarket. You had your oil change today. You treat the people there kindly. We can start at those small places. Don't yell at your neighbor
Hmm.
because they park their car in front of your house, that kind of stuff. Why do we do that? It's we can do it individually, and we'll leave that there. But what I want to bring up here, because we've all been down to Ground Zero in New York. Pentagon's not that easy to get to, but the memorial in Pennsylvania is where Flight 93 went down is absolutely moving. If anybody ever gets a chance to driving through Pennsylvania, stop at that memorial. They did a beautiful job. They planted trees for every person that was killed that day. They have a wall similar to the Vietnam Memorial, except they're individual marble things to each person that was on that plane. And they tell their story. And then inside there's movies where you can see the timeline of the attacks and things. And unfortunately, our memorial in New York City is right now, it's not operating, and they're trying to raise some money to get it back up and going. So if you can contribute to that, there's lots of websites that contribute to that, getting that museum back up and running.
Right. Also, next year for FDIC, they're going to commemorate. Well, I was going to say celebrate. That's not the right
No,
word.
definitely not.
Commemorate the 25th anniversary of 9/11, and there's going to be a ton of great things that there going on, and I believe maybe some memorabilia. It's not all set yet, but it's going to be the FDIC that commemorates the 25th anniversary of 9/11, and it's I think it's going to be incredible. I think it's going to be one of those things that you need to see. Especially younger guys. Yeah, totally younger guys, and some of us who were there, or that remember it for firsthand. To just to kind of just to see it. Just to see it. Not everybody's been to the 9/11 Museum in New York, or Shanksville, or the Pentagon, but I think they're going to try and bring a little piece of it to the FDIC, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I know Timmy Brown is trying to arrange to have some artifacts brought from the museum out to FDIC, so they'll be on display. And like you said, it's not all arranged yet, but Timmy feels very, very strongly about this. So do a lot of other people. But I've had some long conversations with him, as you have, that they're really trying. Let's not forget. And we all said, we'll never forget. Let's not forget. Let our children know.
Yeah.
There are children of firefighters and cops who were killed that day. Also, people who went to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see
right
it.
there.
Yep. And it's all important. We as firefighters, it's our job to champion this to the future generations of firefighters, what they did, and the police as well, and the military that after that. It was a rough time, and I think we shouldn't forget it. Very, very important.
No, we should not forget it, and departments should mark it, like fire departments, across the country. When I know in North Hudson we do that when the planes hit and when the buildings collapsed.
Yep.
There's a commemoration there that we do every year, and I know they go outside and they salute the flag from the outside of each firehouse.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember exactly how they do it, but I know it's still done.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because there's a firehouse that all of a sudden on 9/11 at a certain point, all the guys outside, and in some firehouses there's only 3 guys. they're outside saluting the
Yeah.
flag. When people are probably, what are they doing? Why are they, especially, little kids. Little kids have to be brought into the game.
Yep.
That's not a game, but they have to be brought into the
Yeah.
commemoration.
It's interesting how every little city, where I was a volunteer on Long Island years ago, they do a memorial every year. The city that I work for, Wallingford, they have a memorial in front of City Hall every year, and they have high school students. They write a speech so that to keep it in the schools. Yes, the mayor does a little speech, and the fire department does a little bell ring ceremony, but they have high school kids read essays that they've written about 9/11. So it kind of makes the kids in school, they all write essays, and I don't know what grade it is, maybe it's seniors. And then the one that the school or the organizers of the event, they select one where someone will come and read it in front of the public, in front of City Hall. And I think that's a wonderful way to keep the memory alive in the younger generation.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But I want to move on a little bit. Some of you may know that I've had a little incident, and here's a little memorial to my incident that happened in July from the FDIC and Fire Engineering Advisory Board, and Paul Coombs with his little artwork to send to me as I was healing in the hospital. And I think this was a great thing. But anyway, the reason I bring this up here is on the Fireground, Chief Avillo and I were just discussing before the show how dominoes fall, and that's what causes injuries on the Fireground, and I'll call failures on the Fireground. It's never just one thing. So I'm going to talk about my incident. I'm a fairly agile guy. I exercise. I'm in good shape. And I've climbed ladders my whole life. I actually did work, not like Chief Avillo, years on a truck, but I did work a couple years on the truck as a lieutenant before I got promoted to the car. So it wasn't totally my fault. But what happened, a neighbor, not a close neighbor, but someone a couple miles away had some problems with his clothesline. And they live in a split level. So the clothesline is about 20 feet in the air coming off the deck on the back of the house. So I go there, and short story, the clothesline was wrapped around the outside of the pulley, and it was all frayed and destroyed. So I put a ladder up there, and I'm trying to get it out. I couldn't get it out. Now here's where the size up and the dominoes come in. The problem wasn't putting the ladder up, although I could have put it up in a little more stable position.
You put it on the pole, right?
And I had another thing there as well. So it was sturdy, and I bounced it and made sure it was safe going up.
Okay.
So when I got to the top, I couldn't get it loose. But size up is so important. I never noticed that clothesline was under tension. So the fact that the ladder wasn't as stable as it should have been was one of the dominoes, as we were talking about. But that clothesline was under tension. So think of a bow and arrow. When you pull the string back or when you let go, how much energy there is. So I cut the line.
Or a truss.
Or a truss, absolutely. These are the things that we need to pay attention to. So when I cut that line, that pole sprung, and I was leaning, and I had one hand on the pole, and it pulled me, and I was somewhere between 15 and 20 feet in the air, and then came down, and I ended up with some significant injuries that I'm still working on, but I'm doing very, very well. I had 7 pelvic fractures, and I broke my hip. So the femoral head, they cut that right off, and then they put a metal, well, it doesn't matter, titanium hip ball and socket in place. But the thing was,
Tell them about your in-air athletic move
yeah, well,
to save your life, probably.
it probably did, but I'm not sure whether that's just a fake memory or a real memory. But as I was going forward on the ladder, I said, "This is not."
A very cool visual.
Yes. So I was going face first. So I believe I kicked my legs up so I wouldn't land on my face or my head. And I landed on my left hip. And the impact, you guys who are work EMS, you know about mechanism of injury. So the impact added a couple breaks to my pelvis at the same time. But just a short story, I'm about 8 weeks out now. Hip, I don't even feel at all that they replaced. They replaced the hip. But the pelvic fractures, oh my God, they hurt. But every day is a little better. I'm walking without a cane or a walker these days. Doctor said I can drive short distances. So things are good. But the purpose of that story is good size ups. And it's not just the chiefs. It's not just the company officers. Every firefighter, you're stretching a line into a building. Is there a parapet wall there? Where are the power lines? All that stuff. And how the dominoes, it's never just one thing. And I'm going to ask Chief Avillo to tell a story, not about an injury, but about a decision that was made about replacing Speedy Dry one morning after an accident. I'm sure you remember that story, don't you, Chief?
Yeah.
I mean, it had no impact on an injury, but it had an impact on your later operations. So why don't you tell the story so I don't tell it for you?
Well, there actually were two stories that I talk about with that. Well, you know, you have to recognize the dominoes first before you realize that they're going to fall.
Yes.
If you don't recognize the dominoes, they're going to be falling before you actually do recognize the dominoes. You know, there was an incident where it was a Friday night, I believe, and an engine company went out in the middle of the night to an MVA, and they used all the Speedy Dry down by the Meadowlands, by actually a place called the Tunley Circle. It's down by the Meadowlands. And they used all the Speedy Dry. So they come back to quarters, and the next morning, this is Saturday now, the captains exchange information, and the one captain tells the other that, you know, we're out of Speedy Dry, you have to get Speedy Dry. And if you guys don't know what Speedy Dry is, because there's different things around the country, you know, it's the kitty litter stuff. It's the absorbent stuff that, you know, picks up the spills, right? Or you know, congeals the spills. Anyway, so he tells the captain, you need to get Speedy Dry. Now, where we are, and it's actually different now because I was in the firehouses last week and I saw Speedy Dry in the 2nd Battalion, and this may be why. Speedy Dry was kept in the 3rd Battalion, and North Hudson Regional has 3 battalions, so the company in question was a 1st Battalion company. So they would have had to go off duty, which is not a big deal. Go off duty, go to the 3rd Battalion and get the Speedy Dry. Or, you know, possibly ask another company or ask the battalion, you know, whatever they could have done. You know, quite honestly, they should have done it themselves, which didn't happen. So 24 hours go by and they don't get the Speedy Dry. And whatever excuse they might have had, you know, there's certainly no excuse. 24 hours, first of all, you know, you could be busy, but you're never that busy, you know, unless you have you know, 2-3 major fires that take up your whole tour, you know, which is kind of rare. So they don't get the Speedy Dry, and the 24 hours go by. Now my shift is coming on, and it's a Sunday, and I get in early to do the staffing and, you know, make details and things like that for the day's shift. And I hear the same engine company going down to nearly the same place. Now I don't know anything about the last day or two in that company anyway, and I hear them going down to another MVA where, you know, potentially need the Speedy Dry. And I hear them get on the scene, and I hear them call for Speedy Dry. And I'm thinking, you know, the Delta deputy's still in the rack. He probably don't know about it either. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, why don't they have Speedy Dry? Should have speedy dry. So they call for speedy dry, and another engine has to bring speedy dry down. So engine 4 comes out of my house in Union City down into North Bergen to deliver the speedy dry. And while engine 4 is out of the house, we get a reported fire 2 blocks away from engine 4's quarters with the report of people trapped. It turned out that people were not trapped. It did go to a second alarm, but the first due engine was not available because they were delivering speedy dry. So you could see like the dominoes sort of begin to fall. And if you recognize the first dominoes, and the moral of the story here is do your job.
Yep.
Do your job. What's the most important piece of equipment you got? The piece of equipment you need right now. And the moral of the story is to do your job.
Part B of that, though, is you just talked about you were at the station, and now they have speedy dry in every station. That's how you prevent, after you learn from an incident like that. Why isn't there speedy dry in every firehouse?
Yeah, maybe no room. I don't know if it's every station.
Well, whatever.
I know it's I saw a whole bunch of bags in ladder 3, which used to be Squad 1's quarters until they got a tower ladder. And so I saw a bunch of bags there, which leads me to believe there's also a bunch of bags in Battalion 1 now. And the bags that were in Battalion 3 are probably still there too. I'm not sure, but that was definitely a step in the right direction of taking a situation, take a sad song and make it better, right?
Yep.
So but you have to recognize the dominoes. The recognition of the dominoes. We never speedy dry. What can possibly happen? The most important thing an officer has to have is a good imagination. You don't have a good imagination, you will fail to see these things. Imagination would say, well, we just used a speedy dry. What could possibly happen if we have no speedy dry? And you can't even go through all of the things in your mind that could possibly happen, such as, an engine has to bring it down and miss a first due fire. Like that's the extreme, But if you're an officer, you got to have an imagination. You got to be thinking in those directions when it comes time, when it's about to either do your job, make the decision to do your job properly, or not do your job, or somebody else will do your job, right? That's what your thinking is. Somebody else will get, whatever it happens to be, or it's just speedy dry, right? Not important, it's just speedy dry, but it became extremely important. We had another instance where the intercom on the aerial was broken. And the department left the aerial in service. The in-service and ready status had been compromised on that rig. And we wound up getting a guy injured up there. And it was because they couldn't communicate. And you had a guy down on the turntable that wasn't a ladder guy that retracted the ladder on a guy's legs that went up to talk to him instead of just lowering the ladder like he was instructed to do. But, that's a whole nother story. And it's in my book. I believe there's even a picture it's in the leadership book. And, this was one of those things where, the domino lined up. You recognized the first domino. The intercom was out of service.
Yeah.
While it's just an intercom, it can be critical. And here it was. And it led to an injury of one of our captains. And he was off the job for a year. And, you need to recognize those dominoes.
Absolutely. And some of it goes beyond. And I'm going to put a picture up here. I just took about 6 months ago. I was at a restaurant in another town, not where I live or not where I worked, small town, and I was online for the bathroom, and this is what I saw. I saw this on the stairs to the second floor of this restaurant I was dining in. Now, avoiding dominoes, we all have fire marshals and fire inspectors. Why isn't anybody looking at this in a restaurant, a place of public assembly? And you at 2 o'clock in the morning, if the fire inspector did his job, you wouldn't have to deal with this. But look what you got to get to the second floor. Are you going to stretch a line up there? Yeah, you are, but it's going to be a lot of work. We had a similar incident. It was a private dwelling, so fire inspectors couldn't get involved in this, but the entire first due truck company was removing stuff from the back staircase so we could get to the third floor in this Queen Anne or Victorian, whatever you call it in your districts. But the big three-story homes that were built at the turn of the century, wood frame, so there's. In my department, a truck has 3 people on it. It's not, like FDNY or Chicago. There's 3 people on the truck. So you got the chauffeur out on the turntable getting ready, and 2 guys are just clearing the staircase so the engine company could get up to the 3rd floor where the fire was. Again, it's not the same thing because you can't inspect the house. But if you go in there for a medical, and if your department does medicals and you see this, you need to report it to other companies. I don't know whether you can do anything about getting it cleaned up, but little things like that. Chief Avillo was talking about Speedy Dry. How many times have departments shown up with less than a full tank of water in their booster tank?
You talk about the dominoes falling. I was walking in Atlantic Highlands, where I live, and walking past a building that had a store on the ground floor. Right next to it was the door that opened up to the apartment upstairs. In the hallway, 2 e-scooters sitting in the hallway. I called a buddy of mine who is a North Hudson battalion chief that is the fire official there, and he made some calls and stuff. But, you talk about the dominoes, right? There's a domino right there. That's a domino, and what can possibly happen? You get a mishap with those bikes. Oh, maybe the batteries aren't in, but maybe they are. Maybe the people are just visiting someone, and they don't normally put them in there, but they're just visiting upstairs because it was a 2-story building, so they're visiting somebody in an apartment upstairs, and they left the e-scooters right in the bottom of the stairwell, right? So there's lots of ways that, I'm a big believer, and the more I look at it, and I think I'm going to probably do an article on this, and prefire street intelligence. When I was talking in North Hudson last week, I sort of came upon the realization that we don't pre-plan. We probably pre-plan maybe less than 3% of the buildings, maybe 2, maybe 1. We got a zillion buildings. How many do you pre-plan? We're like every other department. What do you pre-plan? 2-3% of your buildings? But what about the other buildings? What about the other buildings that people need to see? This is pre-fire street intelligence, and pre-fire street intelligence has to lead to a mechanism whereby everybody can find out about a condition, a situation, a domino. That's the term. You gotta be able to recognize a domino, right? So, we had a fire in this big apartment building right before I retired, and maybe a year before I retired. And the last day I got there, they were renovating the building. I went in to just take a look, and I looked on the top floor, and it was an old 5-story ordinary constructed building. We fought the fire inside for an hour. I mean, good construction. The roof now is constructed of laminated wooden I-beams.
Wow.
No. Okay, so the last day I was there, I took the picture and I sent it to everybody. The series of classes I did the other day, nobody knew about it.
Yeah, how many years later is this?
This is 10 years.
Okay, so that's the problem.
I did 12 classes in 4 days, right? And I said to them, an hour before you're sitting in this classroom, if you had a top floor fire in this building, will your ladder companies be up there cutting this roof? And the answer was yes for every one of them. And I said, and so then I showed them the picture. And I said, would you still cut this roof? No. But so what happened was we used to have a thing called a building memo program, like a safety memo program. And if you came across something really weird, you would call the safety officer or the battalion chief, and they would take pictures, send them to headquarters. They put them on a form and send them to everybody. Now they can do it electronically, but they got away from that. But I was talking about it, and the training chief was in the class, and he talked to the chief of department, and they put it back in place. And they said, anybody sees weird stuff, send pictures down to the training chief. Now he's getting inundated with pictures and explanations. And, my thinking was, you probably should have maybe thought this out a little better to get a mechanism in place where, okay, you see something weird, you call a safety chief, a safety officer. Maybe you do it the way we used to do it. But either way, they're moving forward in a very, very good way. And I talk about that in a lot of classes. How many departments do that? You see something today, you're off for 3 days.
Yeah.
And something happens tomorrow.
But the problem is it has to be accessible. So 10 years later, I show up as a battalion chief or a deputy chief at that building. Is that accessible? Is there something in like a book of pre-plans or a computer program that says 323 North Main Street, and it comes up, be advised this has...
They're putting it in the CADs. They're going to put it in the CADs.
Okay, so that's...
I don't know how they're going to do that, but if the CADs are electronic on the rig, they could say like additional information or pictures or dangerous, I guess they could put something in there and you just press the button. Boom, there it is. Building behind a building, bad fire escape.
Right. And one of the problems with that, though, is you got to keep it up because as it changes, it's got to go in there. So where I worked, we tried so many times to have a pre-planned system. And when I first was working there, it was in books by address. Then it got to computers, which really didn't work that well. Did the dispatch say, oh, by the way, there's guard dogs in this building at night? Things like that you need to keep. For us,
we have a hazardous vacant building program. And it's very well. There's mechanisms in place that monitor and keep it moving forward. And I'm thinking what they'd have to do with the CADs is it would have to be something that fire control, our dispatch system, would have to say, be advised, check the hazardous conditions section, or be advised, something like that. Because now what happens is two things occur. Number one, if it's termed a level 1, level 2, or level 3 hazardous vacant building, the empty box, the slash box, or the X box, right? Fire control will say, be advised you're responding to a level 3 hazardous vacant. That means there's an X on the building, right? Nobody's supposed to go in. But we also have a mechanism in place where in January, the safety officer of the 1st platoon checks all the 1st battalion buildings that are in the hazardous vacant building program. In February, he checks 2nd Battalion. In March, he checks the 3rd. In April, the 2nd Platoon safety officer checks 1st Battalion. In May, he checks 2nd. So these buildings get looked at 4 times a year.
That's great.
The problem with this other thing about, hazardous buildings and not necessarily vacant, hazardous conditions, that's going to be a very tough one to sort of maintain and upkeep. And, listen, I'd rather have a hazardous condition not there than not know about one that is there.
Correct.
You know what? That is there now versus not there a year from now.
Yep. New York City has a great program. It's called Pass It On, and I don't know if they still do.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of what this is.
Right. So a memo would come out to all companies and gets posted on the bulletin board. But again, you need to take the next step. Make it available to the battalion chief or the incident commander, whoever he might be, when they're on scene. Okay, at the morning meeting or however you do it, at roll call, be advised there's a hole in the floor at the top of the stairs. They found it. And you read it to your members, and then you hang it up on the bulletin board. It has to go beyond there. And I'm not saying New York doesn't do it, but I'm saying in smaller departments, that becomes harder and harder and harder. You have to make it easily accessible.
The program has to be alive.
Yes.
It can't be a static program. It's got to be a dynamic program. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do. But you know what? One issue can save a life.
Yes.
Right? We September 9th was the 19th anniversary of the line of duty death of Vinny Neglia in North Hudson. He died in a fire that was a shaft fire. It was between 2 buildings. Now, what happened there is here recognized the Dominoes. Here was the first domino. The shaft was illegally covered with a thermal pane skylight. So in the middle of the night, I guess somebody tossed a cigarette down to the shaft and there was garbage in the shaft. So the fire began and there were no alarms in the buildings, or they were broken, whatever it happens to be. The fire sort of began and then it went into a decay stage. So when the fire department got called at like 5:20 20 in the morning or whatever it happened to be. When they got on the scene, they smelled smoke, but there was nothing visible and nothing showing. And one of the occupants said, there's somebody up on the third floor. So they went in, they smelled the smoke. 2 firefighters went in from squad 2. They went to the third floor. Vinny Neglia went to the right. Anthony Cospito, who's now a captain, went to the left. Actually, he's retired now. He's retired captain. Went to the left, and they called for a line, and they were looking for the victim in the apartment. And I believe, my belief is that, when they opened the doors and did things like that, they sort of changed the dynamics in the shaft. The window, it was an old law building, so the window there was a window in the apartment on the shaft, but it was a single pane. So the decayed and the beast waiting to get out of the cage was not only in the shaft, it was also in a cockloft. And there was a backdraft in the shaft and a backdraft in a cockloft that hinged the ceiling down. Vinny was in between the two. Anthony Cospito said, all I heard was glass break and I saw orange. He was able to dive down the stairs. He knocked a bunch of guys down the stairs, and they said that the fire that came out of that stairwell, that came out of that apartment, they said it was just like an ocean of fire. And the guys on the roof said it was like a tornado of fire going out of the shaft. So think about how charged that shaft was, but there was nothing showing. They didn't have masks on because it was clear. And Vinny Neglia probably they got him out of the building, they laddered the third floor, got him out of the kitchen. And but they believe he either obviously inhaled superheated gases or maybe flame, and they weren't able to intubate him, and he died on the way to the hospital. They think the guys that got him out, because I was reading about it yesterday, the guys that got him out figured he was dead when they pulled him out. If you go to my Facebook page, there was a great it wasn't an article, it was the line of duty death report that Rick DeGroot did from the building construction page he has. He shared it to the deputy chief's page, and the Jersey deputy chief's page, but I shared it on my page. If anybody wants to go take a look at it, go on my Facebook page. It's there. Yeah. But it was a case of the dominoes falling.
Always is. You know what?
Just dominoes.
I'm going to go to what you guys used to do there in Jersey. They do it in Wallingford now. The line of duty death report, or the investigation of it. I think that fire companies, on their downtime, if they're not doing any physical training or they're not that busy, should be reading the line of duty deaths. That prevents a domino. What happened to firefighter Jones in Smithtown, New York? I'm just making up names. What happened? What did they do that contributed to the line of duty death? I'm not going to say caused the line of duty death, because that's kind of pretentious of me. But what contributed? What steps? Was it winter? And was the hydrant frozen? Was the engine coming back from another call and used half of the booster tank, or whatever?
Where was the domino? Right. Where was that domino?
Yeah, an example that I'm going to use was actually a very positive thing. One of our city councilors lived on the street where we had this fire, and the neighbor was complaining that the hydrant in front of her house was broken. And the chief of department came up to me with this councilor and said, how long has this hydrant been broken? I go, it's not broken. It's not broken. We're on a very small side street, and I happen to know the mains there. So I had the second due engine lay out to a hydrant on the next street, which was a main street, which had, like an 8 or 10 inch main, where on that side street, it was probably a 3-inch main that was rusted down to a 2-inch main. And I told the first in engine not to use that hydrant. Second due was going to get us big water because I knew this fire was we were probably going to end up going defensive in a very short time. You could just see it. And, so I brought the chief and the city councilor. I said, Scott, who was the pump operator, open up this hydrant, and water came out. So the public assumes, but knowing that main prevented a domino problem from us when we were trying to fight this fire, because I don't know why I knew, because we don't study our mains that well where I work. We should, but we don't. But I knew it was a small main on this side street. It was just a few houses on the block.
Right. Recognize the dominoes. That you gotta recognize a domino, right? And again, this term I kind of came up with recently, prefire street intelligence. I mean, I think that's like so important for companies. Know your area, know the weird stuff in your area. Like, listen, should they have known there was a thermal pane skylight on that roof? Probably not, but if it had been there a long time, maybe they should have. And I don't know, or maybe fire prevention should have seen it and taken care of that. That's why it's always a good idea too to have a good relationship with not only fire prevention, but the people that give out permits in your town, because those people, and a lot of times in a volunteer town, they are firefighters. Hey, look, somebody just took out a permit. They're doing a renovation on their house at this address, and they're going to be putting in lightweight trusses in the roof of this old building. It's something we need to know about. So you take that, you take a look at it, you take a couple of pictures while the building's still open, and it goes into your domino prevention program. How about that, right? Right.
I love it. Well, example of
I got to write that down.
Example of what you just said. Right down the block from fire headquarters where I worked, there was like the old style from the 20s where they had a store on the first floor, just a little corner store, and then above, well, they put a rain roof on it. And you know what a rain roof is, when you put a roof over the old roof. Well, I saw the construction going on, so I took the pictures. So if you try to vent a fire in that store from that roof, there's another roof between you and where you're cutting. And the next roof is 6 feet down. That kind of thing. When that's happening as you're driving by, like you said, take a picture. EMTs, the departments, and I said this earlier in the program, when you do medicals, you're going to see a lot of weird stuff. They're inviting you into the house. Yes, you're not really doing an inspection, but hey, look, behind the closet, there's a staircase going up to a bedroom on the third floor. That kind of stuff. Make a note of it. And I don't know, the authority having jurisdiction, can they go into private dwellings when they do that? I don't know. Every district is different.
Yeah, well, but you can also make recommendations, to people, access the third floor here. You just put a pretty little sign on the door. But in a smoke, you're going to see it. No, probably not.
No,
but there's you can make a difference in many ways. Like, for instance, the picture of that roof, I showed it to every single class. Now this whole department knows about it. They all know about it. That's domino recognition, right? That's positive domino recognition instead of negative domino recognition. So the whole department knows about it. And I sent a picture to the training chief. And I said, this should go in that program. Make sure these guys know about it. And there was another building on 5th in New York where wasn't my shift. I came in the next day where they burned the roof off the building. Question I had now was, what's that roof made of? I don't know, but there were companies there from that jurisdiction, Squad 2, Ladder 1, Engine 4. Well, maybe you guys need to go look at that today and figure out what that roof is made of, because I'll tell you what, my personal feeling is it is not going to be a solid wood roof. Because, well, that's what I'm thinking, so these are things that, there was a department where I used to live, and I happened to see a building that they were renovating, and they were renovating, holding up the second floor with laminated wooden I-beams being held up by like these 2x4 sort of like supports. They put those on the side walls, like almost like as a brace, like a ledger.
Are they temporary?
I don't think so.
Oh my God.
And they put the wooden I-beams across them, so the wooden I-beams were resting on them. I took the picture. The building's closed up now, but I went across the street to the firehouse, right across the street. I said, you guys know about this? They didn't know. No. I said, well, look at this picture. You get a fire in that building right there. That's a real dangerous building, but it looks like an older building. So like this is everybody's
It
responsibility.
is. Oh,
Domino
well,
recognition.
now that you're talking about domino recognition, now what we need is John Fogerty in the background singing about when the dominoes tumbled.
Yes, yes, exactly. Because otherwise, John Cougar will be singing when the walls come
Right.
tumbling down.
Oh, look at you.
Right?
Look at you.
Oh my God, I'm on fire today. Ha, no
You
pun
are.
intended. But well, you know what happened? I just spent 4 days teaching in North Hudson,
Now
and
you're
all of
pumped.
these things. Yeah, yeah. Now I'm pumped. I'm pumped. I drank the Kool-Aid. I drank the Kool-Aid. There's a guy there, and he's a great battalion chief, and he sends me stuff all the time. He is like, you want to talk about Uber into the job, and people know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention him by name, but he is overdosed on the Kool-Aid. I mean, he has overdosed, and the whole department knows it, but he's good, he does.
Oh,
He's Battalion Chief Kevin Cowan. That's his
oh, there
name.
you go.
And he is, yeah, I gotta say his name because he's doing very, very good things about domino recognition. Thank you, Kevin Cowan.
That's great.
Thank you. But it's yeah, it's something everybody's got to do because
Yes.
you know what? You look at those line of duty deaths, and you talk about the line of duty death program. You can almost recognize a domino in every single one of those things. Whether it was a guy not geared up properly, which you know what? How many jobs did he go do before that one that he wasn't geared up properly? Or guys walking inside a collapse zone. How many buildings did they do that before they actually something happened?
Yep.
Not sounding a roof, right? How many times did they not sound the roof before something happened?
Or
So
an officer who lets his driver drive recklessly, roll through red lights, things like that. If the officer is not taking responsibility for that rig, that chauffeur, driver, pump operator, whatever you call them in your department, is going to do it again. And one day there's going to be a tractor trailer coming down the street, and it's going to take out a whole engine company or truck company. Things like that. You cannot as a supervisor. And again, I don't want you to be a jerk and pick on everything that everybody does, but you can't overlook a problem waiting to happen. You need to address it, and you don't have to address it like an ogre. Hey, you know what? I was driving behind you to this call, and you know what? Your chauffeur went through that intersection.
yeah, like he didn't care.
He didn't care.
Yeah, like he didn't care. Yeah, yeah. But it's kind of interesting. Everything we just talked about, all things we learned in Firefighter 1. Building collapse, sounding the roof, right? Not being, driving properly, driving safely. Driving safely, you learned when you were 16. Yep. Most of the things that occur are Firefighter 1 issues that are dominoes that don't become dominoes until they become dominoes. Buildings are other things. Buildings and conditions are other types of dominoes. But you're right. There's also performance dominoes.
Yeah.
You know what?
It's complacency.
Yes, it is.
It's not the guy who comes out of Firefighter 1 that's not doing it. He's going to get off the rig, and he's going to have his collar up. He's going to have his chin strap on.
Yep.
It's the guy who's there 3, 4, 5 years or longer. You know what? We've been to this building 100 times. It's always a false alarm. And then when you force the door, fire comes and meets you at the front door. Those kind of things. We get comfortable. We get complacent. We ignore the possibility. Oh, you didn't check the door for heat. Well, we've been here 100 times for a false alarm. Well, there it is. The very first fire, and this is the last story I'm going to tell. The very first fire I went to in the car as I was officially the battalion chief was at a hospital. Again, automatic alarms. So we got an automatic alarm. So it's first do engine and the command car go lights and sirens. Everybody else goes with the flow of traffic. I pull up, a nurse comes out to me and says, hey, the hallway's filled with smoke. So I tell the first engine officer, hey, a nurse says the hallway's filled with smoke. Well, he opened the door and it was pushing out at his ankles. It was in the section of the laundry building. So it was the laundry room that was burning. So it was a significant fire, but we were going with complacency. We've been to this hospital for automatic alarms with just me and the engine. The truck's really far behind, and we don't have a full response going to that. So I had to upgrade it to a working fire.
Right.
But things like that, complacency, and
I mean, it's all over.
Yeah.
That's why people have to have, departments need to have that LODB program or a near miss program where, like we have in North Hudson, and we didn't make this up. I got it, I think, through Scott Thompson, and I'm not sure he made it up. But every other month, we assign companies to and they know when their assignment is because it's a general order. Anybody wants it, you reach out to me. I'll give you the general order.
I already stole it. They're using it in Wallingford today.
Yeah, but you guys are doing it. It's good. It's a general order, and it basically assigns companies to research, and they have to do it once a year. But it's done like it's actually done 2 times a year across the department, but it's done 3, 6, 9, 12 times a year on each shift, 6 times in each battalion. So anyway, they have to research a line of duty death. There's a form they fill out, and they have to bring that information back to the battalion for a roundtable battalion discussion. And we've learned so many things from it. It's created some change in our department, and it doesn't even have to be a line of duty death. For us, they have to read a NIOSH report. It's got to be a published line of duty death, but it could also be a close call. It could all be maybe one month you do it on something that has happened on the department. Like there's lots of ways that it could go. But again, domino prevention program, man.
Well, with the domino prevention program, I'm going to sign off because I need to stand.
I know you do. I'm sorry. We went longer than we thought. We're actually at 59 minutes.
I think it's perfect. And I would love to go longer, but sitting down for a long period of time is still not quite comfortable for me. But within a month, I'll be good with that. But in closing, and I know the memory of the 24th anniversary of 9/11 was just a couple of days ago. We need to keep him in our thoughts and, not forget what happened here, what happened to us. We were attacked on our own soil, but we handled it well. Unfortunately, we lost many people that day, and we're still losing people. Chief Avillo, I was talking to before, 39 more people have died this year in FDNY from 9/11 illness. Now, this is not just limited to the fire department. There's public. Our citizens are living with this too. People who live down there, people who work down there. This is hard, and they're resilient and they're working. And I know Timmy Brown brings like private tours into the 9/11 museum for civilians that were hurt or burned on 9/11 downtown. So he's doing a lot of emotional support for people outside the fire. For us, we can knock on the door. We can get a counselor if we need it to help us with those type of issues. But the public, it's kind of limited. So I think it's great what he's doing and what they're doing down there. But remember, all year long, remember the sacrifices made those days. Again, I'm going to say ordinary citizens, firefighters, police, Father Michael Judge, and all the other, I'm going to say, religious people that help. There's places you can get help if you need it. And I know this time of year is tough. Like I said, I have friends that are still suffering from it. And you know what? Just be close to them. Give them a call. Hey, how you doing? And
this afternoon at 1:30, there is a podcast that Dina Ali has given, Chief Dina Ali from Raleigh, North Carolina, Hope Out of Darkness. on wellness and resiliency, and it's at 1:30 this afternoon. I don't know if you can still sign up for it. I'm certainly gonna sign on to that because I did sign up for it. But if you're looking for some answers and some inspiration and just the idea that it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to not be okay for a long time. You need to go get help. But so maybe this might help some people. But yeah, it's at 1:30 this afternoon, and you got to go on Fire Engineering, I guess, to sign on. I'm not exactly sure. I had gotten an email on it, so.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think we're finally starting to open our eyes with this. Well, in closing this program, I want to talk about next month. We're hoping to have Captain Mike Dugan on. We're going to talk about ladder safety. It was kind of postponed because of our conversation today and him not being here. And what brought this up, why we want to talk about ladder safety, is my injury. Think about everything you do, and take care of yourselves. And we'll see you next month. And next month it's going to be October already. The leaves are going to be changing colors. Snow's going to be coming.
Mm-hmm. And I believe the November show is good. We're going to look to have the Lewis brothers on. John Lewis, retired out of Passaic, New Jersey, and his brother Walter, who was a chief in Orlando and is now the chief of the Orlando airport. So that'll be another show, hopefully in November, that we'll be doing. And Duffy might be running laps around the building when we're doing that.
You know what? I'm feeling better every day. No cane. I can walk. I can stand. It just takes me a little while to stand after sitting. But anyway, don't do stupid stuff. Be careful out there, and we'll
watch the dominoes.
Watch the dominoes, and we'll see you next month. Chief Avillo, as usual,
Peace
I had
out.
a great time today.